Hello and welcome to this video. Today marks part 2 of my journey on making a display for my lost kitten figures. If you haven't seen part 1, I'm going to link that down in the description. And basically what I'm making is a tiny display that I can put up on my wall for all my figurines that really gives them some more character and gives them a place to live. In this part I'm going to work on the second room, and for this I wanted to try to give it some wallpaper. This didn't really work, although I applied the glue very thinly. It totally wrinkled the paper, although it's a bit thicker than normal printer paper. So I'm going to at some point probably paint over it with some texture, but for now I decided to work on the floors. Technically the floors are really simple. I'm just using some pre-textured foam that I made a while back and cutting that into strips to make the floorboards. Now you can make this type of foam, and I made it many times before, just by scoring a piece of foam with like some wood grain and then heating it up with a either very hot hairdryer or preferably with a heat gun to open up the cells so it will actually give the texture a little bit more. But in my case I am fortunate enough to have a laser cutter, so I just engraved this. This saves a little bit of time, and after making these kind of floorboards many times before, I'm super happy to see that it works so nicely with the laser engraver. Next up, after I got the floorboards installed, it was time to install the kitchen. So I'm just gluing that in, painting the back walls in the same sage color that I used for the other part. And then I'm just applying the background color. I went with this, like, it's a bit more of a chunky paint, but I thought if cats live there, then the whole entire surrounding area would probably not be, you know, the best maintained from the walls. But I also wanted it to still kind of look clean, so I don't mind the chunky look at all. It will just give a little bit of character. I added some wall details in the upper part, and then it was time to work on the floor for the lower one. And for this I wanted to go with like a checkered tile style path, so I picked out some colored pieces of paper and I'm going to weave them again just to get this kind of tile optic. I painted the floors in the same brown that I used for the little tiny laundry basket that I made last time, and then I'm just going over everything with a wash to give it some texture, to dirty it up a little bit and to really bring out the details. Then I'm adding a little bit of a trim just with some brown paper to the upstairs part, and this will hopefully help tying the floor and the ceiling together. I'm also applying the same wash to the basket. It's just some really thinned out black paint that I'm letting seep into the cracks, and then I'm dabbing it off with a piece of kitchen roll, and that will just bring out some of the deeper details, and the surface will still look clean, but it makes it look way more 3D and way more like an actual used object in my eyes. For protecting the tying floor and to actually make it look a bit more like tiles, I'm just applying some really shiny varnish, and the same goes for the tiles on the top and for the kitchen counter. And of course, every cat house needs a cat tray, so I'm using some cardstock and cutting out a little box shape with an opening that I can glue together, and then I'm going to apply some very thin felt on it, and the felt will hopefully look like, you know, a bit more of a fluffy fabric that will cover this. I chose grey because I think that's like one of the most common cat tree colors. It's a bit more neutral, so it definitely I think will look nice in this house. And for the bottom part of this, I'm basically doing the same thing. To put in a base, I'm just gluing in a little piece of the felt into the floor on the left hand side, and while I'm at it, I'm also adding the laundry basket, since that has finally had this paint dry. At this point, everything was dry enough to add the scratch poles that will also hold up the cat tree boxes. And for this, I'm just using some very old straw that I reserved for crafting. And I'm basically covering it with some PVA glue and adding some just twine. And it will not likely stick directly to the straw, but it will actually make the thread stick to itself, which I used this technique before in some other home decoration stuff, and it worked super well. The only thing that didn't really hold up was the pole being glued on the piece, but I'm going to remedy that by just using some CA glue and putting that in place, and then I could actually glue it into the diorama. But of course we also need a cat toy, so I use a tiny pom-pom with just some string that I'm adding in there, and I'm going to glue that in. This is going to be a toy for one of the cats, and I think it ties this together super nicely. Now there's one cat that kind of looks like it's mischievously walking away for something, so I thought why not make a like tumble up flower pot that will make it look like the cat smashed it or something, or just, you know, threw it over and now the plant is all over the floor. So I'm just sculpting one out of paper clay. Now this plant pot will not be perfect in any way, shape or form. It will be quite wonky, but I think it will still look really nice in there. And we already have a lot of things that are a bit more cartoonish wonky, so I think this will really fit into place. As for the plant, I'm going to shave off some foam into like a half dome, and then I'm going to glue in just a toothpick that will basically be the stem. And for the roots, I'm going to add some twine that I'm slightly going to unravel. And once you like fully unravel it and mix it with the dirt, it should hopefully really look like roots. And once everything was dry, it was time to paint this, so I'm giving it the base color of this darker green. And of course for the roots and the stem, I'm going to use a nice brown color, just to give it its actual plant look. This doesn't look too much like a plant yet, so I'm just covering the part where the leaf should go with some PVA glue, and then I'm dunking it into this baggie that I have full of tiny leaves. These are Enskim or the train leaves that I have laying around, and I thought these would fit perfectly for like an indoor plant. Once the outside of the plant pot is dry, I'm hollowing it out a little bit more to give it its shape, and then I'm just painting it with this like terracotta style paint. It's gonna get a white dry brush a bit later on just to make it look a bit more like dried out terracotta. But I think it looks really cute so far. And then next up, it's time to mix up the dirt that has been spilled. So I'm just adding a tiny bit of water, some PVA glue and some brown paint, and with a little bit of black to get like this darker earthy color, to some sand. And this is going to be the spread up dirt. I'm literally adding it to the roots and mixing it in there just to look like they're really covered, and then I'm gluing the plant in first before adding the plant pot and filling that in a little bit more with some dirt. And lastly, I'm also adding some tiny footprints where the cat just really tried to sneak away. The footprints, sadly, I couldn't get as detailed as I wanted to, but that is just because this is a bit more of a grainy texture with all the sand in there, so it's a bit harder to apply in like an even kind of style. So I just in the end gave up and went a bit more abstract, and then I went in with a brush as if it has been dragging the dirt a little bit, and I tried to match the width of its feet. Lastly, of course, the bush would like leave some leaves behind, so I'm just sprinkling on some more on some PVA glue that I'm spreading on the floor, just to make it really look like the plant has gotten a little bit more damage. Each of these packets of the Lost Kittens comes with a clay that you can play with. That is just like a, I guess, kind of Play-Doh-esque clay. And it also comes with these accessories. So I picked out 2 of the milk cartons and the teapot. And I'm going to paint the milk cartons so they actually look like milk cartons and not just plastic castings. I chose to go with a similar color scheme to the original boxes that the Lost Kittens came in. So I'm just tracing the like tiny swirls on the side with some blue and leaving the rest white. As for the teapot, I just went in with a bit of a lighter blue that is a chalky kind of paint, and that will give it a bit more of a pottery-esque look. And here's the finished display piece. I had to put the glass in front to secure them properly in there, and you will notice that one of the cats is actually missing, and that's the wizard because his hat was way too large. But overall I'm super happy. I think it really helps displaying the characters in a way that their like poses come out a bit more and make a bit more sense. Like the tiny cat playing with the ball on the cat tree, or the other one just laying on top of there. I like to think that the thinking cats are trying to figure out how to get into the milk, and that's why they're standing and sitting on the counter there. And of course we have the one cat that sneaks away in the bottom, which I absolutely love, and the other one that is just proudly presenting his sock. Now that it's finished, it may look like a more simple project, but it really took me days to finish, so I'm super happy with how it turned out. Overall, I think all what I envisioned really worked out super nicely, and I actually hung it up on my wall, and it makes me so happy to just look at it the entire time. I thought of adding some more details in the lower part section, but then I thought that the details would really take away from the cats, and I didn't really have any idea besides maybe adding some shelves on top of the plant. But as I said, this is supposed to be a cat display, so I didn't want to take away from the figures. Anyways, let me know in the comments down below what you thought of this project. Did you enjoy it, and would you actually put your figures in a display like this? Or would you just simply sort them neatly on the shelf? Anyways, hope you have a great day. See you next time. Bye bye!